I never thought a piece of paper could hold so much weight. But there I was, standing in the cold, sterile office, pen in my hand. The real estate agent, a guy named Mark with a too white smile, slid the contract toward me. Just sign here, Thomas, he said, his voice all business. It's the right move for everyone. My hand shook, just a little. I told myself it was just the air conditioning. I looked down at the line, waiting for my name. Thomas Hale. 2 signatures. That's all it was. 2 little scribbles to end a chapter, my mom's chapter. I pushed the guilt down deep. It was a heavy, cold stone in my gut. She didn't need that old house anymore. The nursing home was better, safer. The house was just wood and nails and sad memories. It was falling apart. The roof leaked when it rained. The floorboards in the hallway creaked. A specific, lonely song. Every room was a museum of a life I was trying to forget. I pressed the pen to the paper. The scratch of the ballpoint was deafening in the quiet room. I signed my name. Once, then again. I slid the paper back to Mark. He smiled that smile again. Congratulations, he said. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a crime scene, and I was the only one who knew I'd committed the crime. A week later, I had to go back. One last time. To clear out the basement before the new owners took the keys. I pulled up in my truck, the engine ticking as it cooled. The house looked different already. Empty, accusing, like it knew what I'd done. The sold sign out front was a brand, a mark of my betrayal. I used my key, my old key, for the last time. The lock turned with a familiar, gritty click. The smell hit me first. Dust, mothballs, and that unique, sweet scent of old wood. The scent of my childhood. I walked through the hollow living room. My footsteps echoed. Every sound was too loud in the silence. I didn't let myself look at the spot on the floor where our Christmas tree always stood. I didn't let myself glance toward the kitchen, where Mom would always be humming, making pancakes. I headed straight for the basement door. I just wanted to get this over with. Get in, get the junk, get out, never look back. The basement stairs were steep and narrow. I flipped the switch. A single, bare bulb flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. It was a mess down there. Boxes of my old report cards and sports trophies. My dad's forgotten tool bench, rusted and silent. An old washing machine that had given up a decade ago. It was colder down here. The air was damp and still. I started hauling boxes toward the stairs. It was just junk. All of it. I was sweating, my back aching, my mind numb. I was moving a heavy old rug that was bunched up in a corner. When I saw it, a floorboard looked wrong. It was slightly raised, warped. The nail heads weren't flush like the others. It was directly under where my parents' bed had been, upstairs. A place I never went as a kid. Their private space. I knelt down. The concrete floor was cold through my jeans. I ran my fingers over the rough, splintered wood. It wiggled. Just a little. My heart started beating a little faster. A stupid, hopeful part of me thought maybe it was a time capsule. Something silly my dad had hidden. Baseball cards, maybe a bottle of whiskey. I got my fingers into the narrow gap and pried. The wood groaned in protest. It came up with a squeak of old nails. A cloud of dust puffed into the air, making me cough. I peered into the dark space beneath the floor. It wasn't a time capsule. It was a metal box. A lockbox. The kind you see in movies. It was heavy, cold to the touch. It was covered in a fine layer of gray dust. I lifted it out and set it on the floor in front of me. My hands were dirty. My knees were sore. I stared at it. There was no lock, just a simple latch. I took a deep, shaky breath. The damp basement air felt thick in my lungs. I reached out and flipped the latch. It opened with a soft metallic click. Inside, it wasn't filled with money or jewels. It was paper, a stack of old, yellowed envelopes, and on top of them a small black and white photograph. I picked up the photo first. My breath caught in my throat. It was a picture of my mother, but she was young, younger than I'd ever known her. She was smiling, but it wasn't her smile. It was a different, freer smile, and she was holding the hand of a man who was not my father. He was tall, handsome in a sharp, unfamiliar way. They were standing in front of this very house, but it looked new, freshly painted. They looked in love, a deep, radiant love I had never seen in any picture with my dad. My hands started to tremble. This was a secret, a big one. I looked at the envelopes. They were all addressed to her, to Clara Hale. At this address, the postmarks were from over 40 years ago. The return address was a city I didn't recognize. The handwriting was a man's, strong and slanted. I didn't open them. Not then. I just sat there on the cold basement floor, the open box between my knees. The weight of what I had done came crashing down on me. This wasn't just a house. This wasn't just a place full of my memories. This was her sanctuary. This was where her real life, her secret life, had happened. This box, hidden under the floor for decades, was what she had been protecting, and I had sold it. I had signed it away without a second thought. I felt the world tilt. My vision blurred. My knees literally gave out from under me, and I sank onto the concrete. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being practical, an adult. I was just a fool, a traitor. I sold my mother's house without asking, and in this cold, dark basement, I found the one thing that would change everything. I found the truth, and I knew, right then, I would never ever forgive myself. I get this cold feeling just thinking about it now, like I'm back on that floor. I wonder how far this story has reached. Comment below what city you're listening from. Just so I know I'm not alone in this. I sat there for a long time, just staring at that photo. The cold from the concrete floor seeped through my jeans, but I barely felt it. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. My mother, Clara, so young, so happy. A kind of happy I never saw when I was growing up. My dad was a good man, quiet, hardworking. He came home from the factory every day at 5:15, washed his hands at the kitchen sink, and read the newspaper. He loved my mom. I know he did. But it was a steady, quiet love. It wasn't this. This was a lightning bolt. You could see it in their eyes, even in this faded black and white. They were looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. I finally reached for the letters. My hands were still shaking. The paper was brittle, like dried leaves. I carefully pulled the first one from its envelope. The date at the top was from the summer of 1978, a year before I was born. My dearest Clara, it began. The handwriting was that same strong script from the envelope. Every mile this train takes me away from you feels like 1,000. I keep seeing your face on the platform, the way you tried to be brave and not cry. My brave girl, I promise you, this is only for a little while. Just until I can get settled in Chicago, find a good job. Then I'm coming back for you. We'll finish the house. We'll sit on that porch we talked about. This is our beginning, my love, not our end. Wait for me, always. James. I read it twice, then a third time. James. His name was James. I had never heard that name in our family. Never. Chicago. He was going to Chicago to find work, to build a life for them. For her. I looked at the photo again. This was James. He was the one who was supposed to build that life with her in this house. My throat felt tight. I put the letter down and picked up another. This one was a few months later. The tone was different, more desperate. Clara, I got your letter. You can't be serious. Your father is forcing you to do this, to marry him, the man from his office. You don't love him. You love me. Tell him no. Tell him to go to hell. I have a line on a job here at a printing press. It's not much, but it's a start. I can send for you next month. Just hold on. Please, don't do this. Don't throw us away. I'm begging you. I love you more than my own life, James. I felt like I was going to be sick. My mom. My mom was forced into marrying my dad. Her father made her do it, for security, for a good name. The man from the office. My dad was an accountant. Safe, reliable. Not some dreamer from who knows where named James. I read letter after letter. They traced a story of a love that was being systematically torn apart. His letters became less frequent. The hope in them started to fade, replaced by a dull, aching heartbreak. The last letter in the box was dated just a week before my parents' wedding. I received the invitation, Clara. It felt like a punch to the gut. I suppose this is your way of telling me it's really over. I will write again. I can't. It hurts too much. I want you to know that I meant every word I ever said to you. I loved you with everything I had. I still do. I always will. The house is yours. It was always meant for you, for us. Keep it safe. Keep our dream safe. Goodbye, my love. James. I let the letter fall into my lap. The silence in the basement was absolute. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. The house, this house. James helped her get it. It was their dream, their project, not my dad's. My dad just moved into it. He lived in another man's dream for 35 years. And my mom, she lived with a ghost. She lived with the ghost of James and the life they were supposed to have, hidden right under her feet, under the floorboards of the bed she shared with a man she never wanted to marry. All those times she was quiet. All those times she'd get a faraway look in her eyes, staring out the kitchen window. I always thought she was just tired, or thinking about grocery lists. She was thinking about him. She was remembering the man she truly loved, the man she was forced to give up, and I had just sold it. I sold the only physical proof of her real life, her true heart. I sold the sanctuary she built with James. I signed it away to a stranger for a check. I made her deepest secret, her most precious belonging, into someone else's property. A sound escaped my throat, a choked, ugly sob. I put my head in my dirty hands and cried. I cried for my mom, for the life of quiet sacrifice she had to live. I cried for James, whoever he was, wherever he ended up. And I cried for myself, for my stupidity, my arrogance. I thought I knew what was best. I thought the house was just a burden. I never asked. I never once sat down with her and asked, Mom, what does this house really mean to you? The real estate agent, Mark, had called my phone 3 times already. I ignored it. He was probably wondering when I'd be done, when he could get the keys. The new owners were waiting. A young couple, he'd said, just starting out. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. I carefully placed the letters back in the box. I closed the lid. The soft click felt final. This wasn't just a box of old letters. This was my mother's soul. This was her what if, and I had to give it to her. I had to take it to the nursing home and look her in the eye and tell her what I'd done. I had to confess that I'd found her secret. How do you even start that conversation? Hey, Mom, I sold our family home without telling you. And by the way, I found the love letters from the man you really loved hidden in the basement. The thought made me dizzy. I stood up, my legs stiff and protesting. I held the metal box against my chest. It felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. It was the weight of a lifetime of secrets, a lifetime of regret. And now, it was my regret, too. I had to face her. I had to try and fix what I had broken, even though I knew, deep down, some things can never be fixed. I had unleashed a ghost, and I had no idea what it would do to what was left of my family. I carried that metal box out of the basement like it was a bomb. My truck felt different with it on the passenger seat. It wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a confessional on wheels. Every stoplight, I'd glance over at it. The cold, gray metal seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I drove straight to the nursing home. I didn't go home. I didn't shower. I was still covered in basement dust, my jeans stained from the floor. It felt right. I should look as dirty as I felt on the inside. Sunset Gardens. The name always felt like a cruel joke. There wasn't much of a garden, just some patchy grass and a few sad-looking benches. I parked and just sat there for a minute, my hands gripping the steering wheel. The air conditioning was off, and the summer heat was starting to build inside the cab. It was suffocating. How was I going to do this? Do I just walk in and hand her the box? Do I try to explain first? My mind was a tornado of terrible scripts. I finally forced myself to move. I picked up the box. The weight of it was familiar now. A heavy, awful familiarity. I walked through the automatic doors. The smell hit me. Disinfectant, overcooked green beans, and that faint, sweet smell of aging skin. It was a smell I'd gotten used to, but today it turned my stomach. I walked down the hallway. My sneakers squeaked on the polished linoleum. I passed Mr. Gable's room. He was always sitting in his chair, staring at the blank TV. He gave me a small, slow wave. I tried to smile back, but my face felt like cracked plaster. I was almost at her door, room 114. Her name was on a little placard next to it. Clara Hale. It looked so official, so final. Her door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly. She was in her armchair by the window, looking out at the parking lot. She had a small, worn Bible in her lap, but it was closed. She wasn't reading. She was just being. That's what she did most days now. Just existed in the quiet. "Mom?" I said, my voice raspy. She turned. Her face, which usually lit up when I visited, was calm, neutral. "Thomas, this is a surprise. It's not Saturday." "I know. I had to see you." I stepped fully into the room and closed the door. The click was too loud. Her eyes went straight to the box in my hands. I saw it, a flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in her expression. It wasn't confusion, it was recognition, and then fear. Her hands, which had been resting on the Bible, tightened their grip on the leather cover. Her knuckles were white. "What is that, Thomas?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, careful. I didn't know what to say. All my rehearsed speeches vanished. I just stood there, holding the box out like an offering, like a plea for forgiveness. "I went to the house," I started. The words felt thick and clumsy in my mouth. "I had to clean out the basement. Before the new owners move in." I saw her flinch, just a little. She looked from the box back to my face. Her eyes were searching mine. "You sold the house," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A quiet, devastating acceptance. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I thought it was for the best. The upkeep, the memories. I thought it was a burden. The excuses sounded so hollow, even to me. She was silent for a long time. She just looked at me. Then her gaze dropped back to the box. "Where did you find it?" she whispered. "Under the floorboard," I said, my own voice dropping to a whisper to match hers. "In the basement, right under where your bed used to be." A single tear escaped from the corner of her eye. It traced a slow path down her wrinkled cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She just let it fall. She nodded slowly, as if she'd been expecting this day for 40 years. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I choked out. The dam broke. The tears I'd been holding back in the truck started to fall. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know any of it." I walked over and placed the box on the small table next to her chair. I knelt down on the floor beside her, like I was a little kid again. I put my head on the arm of her chair. I couldn't look at her. I felt her hand. It was cool and thin, her skin like paper. She laid it on top of my head, a gentle weight. She didn't say anything for the longest time. She just stroked my hair while I cried. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was far away, like she was speaking from another time. His name was James, she said. The name hung in the quiet room. It was real now. It was out in the open. He was the great love of my life. I lifted my head. My vision was blurry with tears. The letters. He built the house for you. She nodded, her eyes fixed on some distant point only she could see. He did. He bought the land with his mustering out pay from the army. We were going to build it together. He got the foundation and the frame up before he had to leave for Chicago. His father had gotten him a line on a job. It was supposed to be temporary. She let out a soft, broken sigh. My father didn't approve. James was unpredictable. He was an artist, a dreamer. My father wanted a banker, an accountant. He wanted your father. She said your father with a strange tenderness. There was no malice in it, just a deep, profound sadness. So you married Dad because you were forced to? I asked, my voice cracking. She looked at me then, her eyes clear and sharp. It wasn't that simple, Thomas. My father, he threatened to disown me, to cut me off completely. And James's letters, they started to slow down. The job in Chicago fell through. He was struggling. I was scared. I was 22 years old. I thought the safe choice was the right choice. I thought I could learn to love your father, and I did, in a way. He was a good man, a kind man. He never knew. He never ever knew. She reached out and touched the lid of the metal box. I kept it all. I couldn't bear to burn them. It was all I had left of myself, of the girl I was before I became a wife, before I became a mother. I hid it the day we moved in. I thought if I buried it, I could bury the feeling too. She gave a sad, little laugh. It doesn't work that way. I sold it, I sobbed, the guilt crushing me. I sold your house. I sold your dream. She looked at me, and her expression was the strangest mix of sorrow and pity. Pity for me. Oh, Thomas, she said softly. You didn't sell my dream. My dream died a long, long time ago. The day I married your father. You just sold the house. Her words should have made me feel better. They didn't. They made it worse. Because I realized I hadn't just betrayed her present. I had desecrated her past. The one sacred place where she kept the memory of who she really was. Did you ever hear from him again? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. She shook her head. No, not a word after that last letter. I would look for his name in the paper, in the obituaries. I never found it. I suppose a part of me hopes he found happiness, that he built a life somewhere, that he finally got to sit on a porch somewhere and watch the sunset. We sat in silence for a while. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. The metal box sat between us, a silent monument to a life not lived. What do we do now? I finally asked. It was a stupid question. There was nothing to do. My mother looked at the box, then out the window. Now, she said, her voice firm for the first time, you will go back to that nice real estate man, and you will tell him the sale is final, and you will not feel guilty about it anymore. I stared at her. But Mom. No, she said, cutting me off. She turned her gaze to me, and it was fierce. This guilt is mine to carry, not yours. You were trying to help. You made a decision you thought was right. I made a decision I thought was right 40 years ago. We both have to live with them. She patted my hand. Now, help me open this. My arthritis is bad today. I think I'd like to read them one more time. So I did. I opened the metal box for her. I lifted the stack of letters out and placed them in her lap, on top of her Bible. She picked up the first one, her hands trembling slightly. And I sat there, on the floor of a nursing home room, and watched my mother reunite with the ghost of her first and only true love. I watched her smile a small, private smile as she read words written for her a lifetime ago. And in that moment, I understood. I hadn't destroyed her secret. I had returned it to her. It was no longer a weight hidden under the floor. It was a memory, held in her hands. Finally, brought into the light. It didn't fix what I did. It didn't bring the house back. But it changed something between us. A wall came down. A truth was acknowledged. And for the first time since I found that box, I felt like I could finally breathe. If you've ever had a family secret come out, you know how the air changes. It's heavy, but it's clear. Let me know in the comments if you've ever been through something like that. Just type family secret if you have. It helps to know I'm not the only one. And if you're just joining this story, you might want to go back and watch from the beginning. This is a lot to take in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. This story, it's far from over. The drive back from Sunset Gardens felt like a different lifetime. The metal box was gone from my passenger seat, but its ghost was still there. I could still feel the cold weight of it in my hands. My mom's words played on a loop in my head. You didn't sell my dream. My dream died a long, long time ago. It was supposed to make me feel better. It didn't. It just made the whole thing sadder. A deep, quiet, hopeless kind of sad. I pulled into my own driveway and just sat there. My house looked foreign to me. A place I bought with my wife, Sarah, 5 years ago. We picked out the paint colors together. We planted a tree in the backyard when our son Leo was born. It was supposed to be our fresh start. Now it just felt like a set. A stage where I was acting out a life, while my mom's real life was a box of letters in a nursing home. I walked inside. The air conditioning was on, a steady artificial cool. Sarah was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. Leo was in his high chair, smashing a piece of avocado into his hair. A normal Tuesday evening. The sight of it was so painfully normal, it made my chest ache. "Hey, you're back early," Sarah said, not looking up from the cutting board. "How's your mom?" I didn't know how to answer that. I leaned against the doorway, my body feeling heavy and useless. I went to the house today, to clear out the basement. She finally looked at me. She saw my dirty clothes, my red-rimmed eyes. Her face softened. "Oh, honey, that must have been rough. All those memories." "You have no idea," I whispered. I walked over to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. The dust from the basement swirled down the drain. I watched it go, wondering if I was washing away a part of my mom's history. Sarah came up behind me, putting a hand on my back. "What happened, Tom? You look like you've seen a ghost." I turned around and looked at her. At her kind, worried eyes. We told each other everything. At least I thought we did. But this felt too big, too sacred. It wasn't just my secret to tell. It was my mom's. It was James's. "I found something," I said, my voice low, so Leo wouldn't hear. "In the basement, under a floorboard." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What, like money? Old jewelry?" I shook my head. I couldn't say the words. "Love letters. From a man who wasn't my father." It felt like a betrayal just to think it. Just some old papers, my mom's stuff, from before she married Dad. Sarah studied my face. She's a therapist. She can read people. She knew I was holding back. And what was in them? I looked over at Leo. He was babbling happily, covered in green goo. He had my dad's eyes. I saw my dad in him every single day. The man who raised me, who taught me how to throw a baseball, who worked 2 jobs to put me through college. The man who never, ever knew that the house he slept in, the bed he shared with his wife, was built on another man's dream. "It's complicated, Sarah," I said, finally. "It's my mom's private business. It changes how I see everything." She didn't push. She just nodded and squeezed my arm. Okay, I'm here when you're ready to talk about it. But would I ever be ready? This secret was a live wire. If I touched it, it could electrocute everything. My memory of my dad, the foundation of my own childhood. What if I told Sarah and she looked at my dad differently? What if she looked at me differently? I picked up Leo from his high chair. He giggled and grabbed my nose. His hands were sticky. This was real. This was my life. My mom's life. Her past with James. It was a story in a box. But it had consequences. Real, tangible consequences that were rippling through my life right now. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew who it was without looking. Mark, the real estate agent. The new owners were waiting. The papers were signed. The money was in my account. It was done. I handed Leo back to Sarah. I have to make a call, I said. I went out to the back porch and closed the sliding door behind me. The evening air was warm and thick. I dialed Mark's number. It rang twice. Thomas, hey, I was getting worried. Everything all right over at the house? Get the basement cleared out? I took a deep breath. I could still smell the faint, musty scent of the basement on my clothes. Yeah, Mark, it's all clear. Great, fantastic. So the keys? I can meet you over there tomorrow morning, say 10? The Millers are eager to get started. They've got painters lined up for the weekend. The Millers, a young couple, just starting out. They were going to paint the walls. They were going to change the floors. They were going to erase every last physical trace of James and my mom. They were going to build their own dream on top of a buried one. My mom's voice was in my head again. You will tell him the sale is final, and you will not feel guilty about it anymore. Thomas, you there? Yeah, I said, my voice rough. I'm here. 10 o'clock is fine. I'll have the keys. We hung up. I leaned on the porch railing and looked up at the sky. The first stars were coming out. I wondered if James ever looked at these same stars and thought about my mom. I wondered if he ever knew that the house he built for her was finally, truly gone. I had to make a choice. I could let this secret poison me. I could let the guilt and the shock and the sadness eat me alive. Or I could do what my mom said. I could carry on. I had a family, a son who needed a father who was present, not a ghost haunted by another ghost. But some secrets don't just stay buried. They have a way of bubbling back up. And as I stood there, a terrifying thought occurred to me. The house was sold. The letters were found. But what about James himself? What if he was still out there? What if my mom's greatest love was still alive? The thought was like a jolt of lightning. It changed everything, again. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How one decision, one signature, can unravel threads you never even knew were connected. Have you ever made a choice that ended up revealing a truth you never saw coming? Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. It helps to feel connected, like we're figuring this out together. I stood on my back porch, the wood still warm from the day's sun. The phone call with Mark was over. The deal was done. But my mind wouldn't stop. It was racing, chasing a ghost named James. What if he was still out there? The thought was insane. It was a crazy, desperate hope born from my own guilt. But I couldn't shake it. My mom said she never found his name in the obituaries. She looked. For decades, she looked. That meant he could have lived a full life. He could be in his 70s now. He could be living in some sunny retirement community in Florida. Or he could be right here in Illinois, just a few towns over. I went back inside. Sarah had put Leo to bed. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The normal sounds of our life, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, felt like they were accusing me. You okay? Sarah asked. She was curled up on the couch with a book, but she wasn't reading. She was watching me. I sat down heavily in the armchair across from her. I felt like I had aged 10 years in one day. I don't know, I said. It was the most honest thing I'd said all night. This is about more than just old papers, isn't it? She asked softly. I looked at her, my wife, my partner. I had built a life with her based on honesty. And here I was, holding the biggest secret of my family's history. A secret that felt like a betrayal of my own father. It's about my mom, I started, my voice barely above a whisper. Before Dad, there was someone else. Sarah closed her book slowly. She didn't look shocked. She just looked patient, ready to listen. His name was James, I said. Saying his name out loud to someone other than my mom made him more real. It gave him weight in my world. He built the house, our house, the one I just sold. He built it for her. Sarah's eyes widened just a fraction. He built it. He was an artist, a dreamer. My grandfather didn't approve. He forced her to marry my dad. James went away to Chicago for a job, and his letters, they stopped. She married Dad. They moved into the house that James built for her, and she hid every letter, every photo, under the floorboards for 40 years. I watched Sarah process this. I saw her mind working, connecting the dots. She looked around our living room, at our photos on the wall. I knew what she was thinking. What if her father had forced her to marry someone else? What if the life we had was built on a lie? Oh, Tom, she breathed out. Your poor mom. She told me I didn't sell her dream. She said her dream died when she married Dad. But Sarah, what if it didn't? What if James is still alive? The question hung in the quiet room. It sounded even crazier saying it out loud. Sarah was silent for a long moment. What would you do if he was? I don't know, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Apologize. Tell him. I don't know what I'd tell him. That the woman he loved never forgot him. That the house he built with his own hands is gone. It's not my story. It's not my place. But you feel like it is your place, she said. It wasn't a question. Because you're the one who sold the house. You're the one who dug up the secret. She understood. She always understands. The guilt wasn't just about the house. It was about being the one who disturbed the past. I was the pebble thrown into the pond, and now I was watching the ripples spread, and I had no idea how far they would go. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom's face as she read those letters. That small, private smile. I saw my dad's face, smiling back at me from a family photo. He looked so happy. He never knew. He died thinking he had given my mom everything she ever wanted. The next morning, I met Mark at the house for the last time. 10 o'clock sharp. The sun was already high and hot. The house looked different in the daylight. It looked smaller. Sad. Mark was all smiles, full of energy. Big day. The Millers are thrilled. They've got so many plans for this place. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I handed him the keys. They felt cold and heavy in my hand. The final act. You sure you got everything you need from the basement? He asked, his tone shifting to something more sympathetic. Yeah, I croaked. I got everything. I got more than I ever bargained for. I drove away without looking back. In my rearview mirror, I saw Mark locking the front door. It was over. The Hale family's ownership of 1414 Maple Lane was officially, legally finished. But as I drove, that question kept pounding in my head. What about James? It was an obsession now. A compulsion. I couldn't just let it go. I had to know. I drove to the local library instead of going home. I needed a computer. I needed to look. The library was cool and quiet. I found an empty computer terminal in the corner. My hands were shaking as I typed his name into the search bar. James. My mom never told me his last name. I didn't even know his last name. The hopelessness of it hit me like a physical blow. How do you find a man with only a first name? A man who was an artist in the 1970s. He could have changed his name. He could have died under a different name. He could be anywhere. I put my head in my hands. It was useless. I was chasing a phantom. But then I remembered the letters. The return address, Chicago. It was a long shot, a city of millions. But it was something. I started searching for Chicago artists from the 70s. I looked at archived gallery showings. I scanned through lists of names. Nothing felt right. It was like looking for a single specific grain of sand on a beach. I was about to give up when I decided to try something else. I went to a People Finder website. I typed in James, and for the last name, I put a wildcard asterisk. I filtered for men in their 70s, currently living in Illinois. Dozens of names popped up. James Miller, James Peterson, James Wright. It was a list of strangers. I scrolled through them, my eyes glazing over. This was stupid. This was a waste of time. I was about to close the browser when a name near the bottom of the page made my breath catch in my throat. James Corrigan. Corrigan. It was an Irish name. My mom's maiden name was O'Connell, also Irish. It was a flimsy connection, nothing more than a shared heritage. But something about it felt right. I clicked on the name. The listing was sparse. James Corrigan, age 76. Last known city, Chicago, Illinois. My heart started to beat a little faster. It didn't mean anything. It was just a name. There was a link for a background report. It cost money. I hesitated for a second, my finger hovering over the mouse. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to go down this road? I thought of my mom's hands, trembling as she held that first letter. I thought of the absolute certainty in her voice when she said, "He was the great love of my life." I clicked the link. I entered my credit card information. The page loaded, spinning its wheels, and then his life appeared on the screen in front of me. James Corrigan, born 1947. Former residences, Chicago, Illinois, Tucson, Arizona, and then, for the last 20 years, a town called Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Oak Creek. That was less than 2 hours away from my mom's nursing home. Less than 2 hours away from the house he built for her. The air left my lungs. It felt like I'd been punched. I kept reading. There were no records of a marriage. No records of any children. He had lived a quiet life. He had worked as a freelance illustrator, an artist. It had to be him. The geography, the profession, the timeline, it all fit. I printed the page, the printer whirred to life, the sound impossibly loud in the silent library. I took the warm paper in my hands. I was holding a map to a ghost. I had found him. Now what? Do I drive to Oak Creek? Do I knock on his door and say, "Hi, you don't know me, but you were in love with my mother 50 years ago"? Do I tell my mom? What would that do to her? She made her peace. She said her dream was dead. What would it do to her to know he was so close? To open that wound all over again? Or do I do nothing? Do I bury this information, just like she buried those letters? Do I let the past stay in the past? I sat in that library chair for a long time, holding the paper that held his name. I had wanted an answer. Now I had one, and I had no idea what to do with it. One signature sold a house. One click of a mouse found a man. Every action has a consequence, and I was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to start an avalanche I could never stop. What would you do? If you held the address of a ghost from your parents' past, would you go knocking? Or would you let sleeping dogs lie? Tell me what you think, because right now I am completely lost. I drove home from the library. The printed page with James Corrigan's information sitting on the passenger seat like a live bomb. Every time I glanced at it, my stomach twisted. Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Less than 2 hours away. All this time, he was right there, while my mom was tending her garden, while my dad was mowing the lawn, while I was growing up in that house. He was just across the state line. I pulled into my driveway and just sat there, the engine off. The house looked normal. Our house, the one Sarah and I bought together. It was supposed to be our fresh start, a place with no ghosts. and now I was bringing one home with me. I folded the paper and shoved it deep into my jeans pocket. I could feel the shape of it against my leg. A secret. A key to a door I wasn't sure I should open. Sarah was in the kitchen making lunch for Leo. She took one look at my face and knew. "What happened?" she asked, her voice low. She wiped her hands on a towel and came over to me. "I went to the library," I said. It was all I could get out. Her eyes dropped to my pocket. "Did you find something?" she asked. I nodded. I couldn't speak. I just pulled out the crumpled paper and handed it to her. I watched her eyes scan the information. I saw the moment she understood. Her lips parted slightly. She looked from the paper to me, her expression a mix of shock and, she finally asked, "I don't know, Sarah. I honestly don't know." I ran my hands over my face. I felt so tired. Do I tell my mom? Do I just show up at his door? What do I even say? "Hi, I'm the son of the woman you loved a lifetime ago. By the way, I just sold the house you built for her." "Maybe you don't have to do anything," she said gently, placing a hand on my arm. "Maybe you just know. And that's enough. You can carry it for her. But is that fair?" The question burst out of me. She spent her whole life wondering. She looked for him. What if he spent his whole life wondering about her too? What if this piece of information is the thing that gives them both some kind of peace? She was right. She was always the voice of reason. But the guilt was a physical thing, a heavy rock in my gut. I sold the house. I dug up the box. I was the one who set this chain of events in motion. Didn't that make it my responsibility to see it through? I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I played with Leo, but my mind was in Wisconsin. I ate dinner, but I didn't taste a thing. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Part of me was terrified it would be my mom, somehow knowing what I had done. Another part, a shameful part, was hoping it would be. That night, after Sarah and Leo were asleep, I did the thing I knew I shouldn't. I went online and I looked up Oak Creek. I looked at street views of the neighborhood where James Corrigan lived. It was a quiet, tree-lined street with modest, well-kept houses. I zoomed in on one house in particular, a small blue ranch-style home with a neat lawn and a single oak tree in the front yard. It looked peaceful. Was that his house? Was he in there right now, sleeping? Or was he awake, thinking about the past? Did he ever think about the girl from Illinois? Did he ever drive through our town just to see the house he built? Did he ever see my mom in her garden? The questions were a torrent, and I was drowning in them. I closed the laptop. This was madness. This was an obsession. I was stalking an old man based on a 50-year-old love story and a gut feeling. I went to the small desk in our home office and took out the box of letters. I hadn't touched them since that day in the basement. I lifted the lid. The smell of old paper and time wafted out. I picked up the first letter, the one that started it all. My mom's young, hopeful handwriting, his bold, artistic script. I read a few lines. "My dearest Eleanor, I laid the foundation today. I mixed the concrete myself. Every time I swung the hammer, I thought of you. This isn't just a house. It's a promise. It's our future. I'm building a life for us, one nail at a time." I put the letter down. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just a story in a box. This was a man's hope. This was his labor, his love, made physical. And I had sold it. I had taken his promise and I had cashed it in. The weight of that was crushing. I had to know. I had to look him in the eye. I had to see the man whose dream I had inadvertently dismantled. The decision settled in my bones, cold and hard. I was going to Oak Creek. I didn't tell Sarah. I knew she would try to talk me out of it. I told her I had to run some errands, that I needed some time to clear my head. She looked at me with those knowing eyes, but she just kissed my cheek and said, "Be careful." The drive to Oak Creek was a blur. I don't remember the roads or the scenery. All I remember is the pounding of my heart and the folded piece of paper on the seat beside me, the address circled in red pen. I found the street. I found the blue house. It looked exactly like it did on the computer screen. It looked real. It looked lived in. There was a car in the driveway, an old, well-maintained sedan. I parked a few houses down. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. What was I doing? This was a terrible idea. This was invading a man's life. This was opening a Pandora's box that could never be closed. I sat there for 20 minutes, wrestling with myself. Go forward. Go back. Face the consequences. Run from them. In the end, it was the memory of my mom's face that decided it. The raw, unguarded pain and love in her eyes when she talked about him. She deserved to know. He deserved to know. I got out of the car. My legs felt like jelly. I walked up the front path. The lawn was perfectly manicured. There was a small, hand-painted ceramic bird on the porch. It felt like the home of an artist. I stood at the front door. I took a deep, shaky breath. I could hear a television on inside. Some old movie, it sounded like. I raised my hand. I hesitated, my fist hovering an inch from the wood. This was it, the point of no return. I knocked. The sound was too loud in the quiet afternoon. The TV inside went silent. I heard footsteps, slow, measured footsteps coming toward the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I thought I might be sick. The doorknob turned, the door opened, and there he was, an old man, tall and thin, with a full head of white hair and bright, intelligent blue eyes. He looked at me, a polite, curious expression on his face. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was softer than I expected. It had a gentle, raspy quality. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I was face to face with the ghost. I was looking into the eyes of the man who loved my mother, the man who built our house, the man whose life I had just crashed into, and I had no idea what to say. I just stood there on his porch, my mouth hanging open. James Corrigan looked at me, his head tilted slightly. Those blue eyes were patient. He was waiting for me to speak. "My name," I finally choked out. "My name is Thomas Hale." Nothing, no reaction, just polite confusion. "My mother," I tried again, my voice cracking. "Her name is Eleanor Hale." And then I saw it. A flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in his eyes. The name meant something to him. It was like watching a light turn on in a very dark, very old room. "Eleanor," he repeated. He said her name softly, like it was a fragile thing, a memory he was afraid to break. "Yes, sir," I said. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. He looked past me, at my car parked down the street. Then he looked back at me. Really looked at me. He was studying my face, looking for her in my features. "You'd better come inside," he said. His voice was quiet, but firm. He stepped back and held the door open. I walked into his house. It was neat and clean. The air smelled like oil paint and coffee. The walls were covered in artwork. Landscapes, portraits, all of them his, I assumed. They were beautiful. He led me to a small living room. An old armchair faced a television. A book was open on the side table. "Sit, please," he said, gesturing to a sofa. I sat on the very edge of the cushion. He lowered himself slowly into his armchair. He never took his eyes off me. "Eleanor O'Connell," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a fact from another lifetime. "That was her name," I whispered. A slow, sad smile touched his lips. I wondered, sometimes, what became of her. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. His hands, I noticed, were an artist's hands. Long fingers, stained with a little paint. Is she well? I had to swallow hard before I could answer. She's in a nursing home. Her memory, it comes and goes. He nodded, absorbing this. And your father, is he? He passed away a few years ago, I said. I'm sorry, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. There was a long silence. The clock on the wall ticked. I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. I had to say it. I had to get it out. Mr. Corrigan, James, I started. I have to tell you something. I did something terrible. He just waited. He had the patience of a man who had spent a lifetime waiting. The house, I said. The house on Maple Lane. The one you built. His eyes widened just a fraction. He knew exactly which house I meant. I sold it, I said. The words felt like gravel in my mouth. I sold it last week. I didn't ask her. I signed the papers. I expected anger. I expected him to stand up and yell at me, to tell me to get out. I was prepared for that. I deserved that. But he didn't get angry. He just leaned back in his chair. He looked old, tired. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were glistening. I see, he said softly. I found the box, I rushed on, needing him to understand the whole awful truth. In the basement, under the floorboard, the letters, all of them. Now his composure broke. A single tear escaped and traced a path down his wrinkled cheek. He didn't wipe it away. You read them, he said. I did. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have, but I did. He was quiet for a long time, just looking at a spot on the carpet. I didn't dare speak. I loved her, he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. I loved her more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I was building that house for us, for our life together. He looked up at me, his gaze intense. Then her father came to see me. He told me I was ruining her life, that I had nothing to offer her, that she would be throwing her future away on a starving artist. He said if I truly loved her, I would let her go. I would disappear. My blood ran cold. So you did. I did, he whispered. I wrote her that last letter. I told her I was leaving. I told her not to look for me. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was setting her free. He shook his head. A lifetime of regret in that simple motion. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I spent years, decades, wondering if I'd been a coward. If I should have fought for her. She looked for you, I told him. She tried to find you. She never stopped loving you. He put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. I just sat there, watching this strong, quiet man break apart in front of me. I had caused this. My actions had led me here, to this moment of profound, ancient grief. After a few minutes, he composed himself. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Why are you here, Thomas? He asked me. Why did you come? I had asked myself that same question 100 times. Now I knew the answer. I came to tell you that she never forgot you, I said. I came to tell you that the house was filled with her love for you, even if you weren't in it. And I came to apologize for selling it, for throwing away the last physical piece of your promise to her. I am so sorry. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something other than sadness in his eyes. I saw understanding. You were a son, trying to do what you thought was best, he said. I was a young man trying to do what I thought was best. We both failed her in our own ways. He took a deep breath. The house was just wood and nails, Thomas. The promise, the love, that's what mattered. And you didn't sell that. You can't sell that. It's still here. He tapped his chest over his heart. His forgiveness was a weight lifted from my soul, a weight I hadn't even known I was carrying. Would you like to see her? I asked, the idea forming as I spoke the words. He looked startled. Now, after all this time, her memory is fragile, I said. But some days she's very clear. She talks about you. She calls you the great love of her life. He was silent for a long moment, considering it. I could see the war in his eyes, hope warring with fear. Yes, he said, his voice firm with a new resolve. I would like to see her. We drove to the nursing home together. He was quiet in the passenger seat, looking out the window. I called ahead. I told the nurse my mother was having a visitor, an old friend. When we walked into her room, she was sitting in her chair by the window, looking out at the bird feeder. She turned when she heard us come in. She saw me first. Tommy, she said, a small smile on her face. Then her eyes shifted to the man standing beside me, and she stopped. The whole world stopped. She didn't say anything. She just stared at him, her mouth opened slightly. Her hands, which had been resting in her lap, began to tremble. James took a slow, hesitant step forward. Ellie, he whispered. It was the name from the letters, the name only he had ever called her. A single perfect tear rolled down my mother's cheek, but she was smiling. A real, true, radiant smile that lit up her whole face. It was a smile I hadn't seen in decades. It was the smile of the young woman in the letters. James, she breathed. You found me. He knelt down in front of her chair, taking her trembling hands in his. I'm so sorry it took me so long, he said, his voice breaking. I backed out of the room quietly. I closed the door, leaving them alone. I stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, and I cried. I cried for all the lost years. I cried for the pain I had caused. But mostly, I cried with a strange, painful joy, because after 50 years, a promise had finally been kept. It wasn't the promise of a house. It was the promise of a love that never really died. I go back to visit her every day. James is there now too, almost every afternoon. He brings his sketchbook. He draws her while she sleeps. He holds her hand while they watch the birds. She has more good days now. She's more present. She's at peace. I sold a house. I thought I was erasing the past, but I was wrong. All I did was finally bring it home. This whole mess started because I asked myself, what would you do? Now I'm asking you something else. Have you ever had a secret from your family's past come to light? A secret that changed everything you thought you knew? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, if it made you think about the choices we make and the love we leave behind, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Because every story has a consequence, and yours might be next.